Tara 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 tara. Peace. Notiri poof. Martini ching. Shoot it. Ah! I was born a premature child, 7 months, and my parents weren't ready for it, and so they put me in a suitcase to sleep in. I am originally from Chile. I was born in Honduras. My mother's from Trinidad, my father's from Chile, and I have lived in Montreal for 7 years. I've moved from Honduras to Ecuador to Colombia to Brazil to Chile to Montreal, and moved houses I don't know how many times, and traveled so many times, and a suitcase has always been very much present in my life and very much present of what home is for me. Sunk in the Trunk is a clown's wonderful struggle with immigration. It's a play about two clowns. One clown called Wendy that lives in a trunk, and another clown called Ernesto that only lives for his toilet paper lines that creates borders. We basically have incorporated clowning because I found that the only way I could really talk about this theme, which was a theme that's very, very heavy, was by laughing. I had a dream one night in February of 2000, and I dreamt that I came to Montreal and got into Cirque du Soleil. 6 months later, I got on a plane and came to Montreal. Didn't get into Cirque du Soleil, but fell in love with Montreal and stayed. The first time I thought about residency was maybe a year after I'd arrived in Montreal. That process took me about 3.5 years. At one point, I had asked for a work permit. And instead of getting a work permit, I got a deportation letter, an invitation to leave the country. And if I didn't do so by choice, I had to do so by force. I lost my job because of it, and eventually I couldn't continue staying in Canada, so I had to leave and I went to live in London, England. I had a British passport and my brother was living there, so I exiled myself, as I call it. So when I was in London, England, I received an email from my agent that was working on my dossier in the Canadian Embassy in Chile. He gave me 3 options at the time. He says, either return to Canada, return to England, or return to Chile. So at a moment in my life, I was a citizen of 4 countries, but a resident of nowhere. So eventually I decided, okay, I'm going back home. So I flew back to Chile. The day I decided that I was going to stay, 2 days later, I got a call from the Canadian Embassy saying, Mrs. Lynn Cooper, you've gotten your residency.
Casa, Lucy, guarda, I do. Papi pum pum, papi chin chin, Miami. Confiscata, expirata, deportata.
Although going through immigration and getting my immigration papers was very, very hard, I still had it quite easy, and there's many people out there that don't even have the chance, and it's a matter of life or death if they can go home or not. I couldn't really detach myself from my personal experience. It was so, I just lived it, and I needed closure, and I needed to express it, right? So basically I just synthesized a bit everything that I'd lived, like deportation, expiration, border, papers.
Frontieri!
The reason why aesthetically we use toilet paper, we use the plungers and the toilet constantly is comes from a very personal experience. I was cleaning toilets in this fast food restaurant, and I was cleaning and cleaning and cleaning, and I realized, oh, I really, really need to do a story about this.
Prisioneri executata, di immediati.
Onomatopoeia means sounds. So basically it's no, hey, fontieri.
Oh my god!
The reason why we chose to use this language was that, first of all, it was a universal play. Immigration happens everywhere. Second of all, I'd lived this experience of being an interpreter for refugees in London, and it was all these languages that was going on in this agency that I worked in. And the other third reason was because we live in a city that is French, English, in a country is bilingual. I didn't really want to take sides. I didn't want to choose. I wanted to be able to communicate in no matter what language. I'm not an Anglophone, I'm not a Francophone, I'm a Hispanophone that speaks English and French and Portuguese.
On y demandait
Ça,
juste
c'est
une
encore une
demi-heure.
troisième
Il
version.
demandait une demi-heure.
No, that's the first two, no, seconds.
Okay,
No,
well, it has to be somewhere, 'cause
Air transit here.
People ask me, so, you're here for good, you want to get Canadian citizen, you're going to stay here forever. That question freaks me out, and I feel guilty sometimes because after everything I went, I should automatically say, of course. But it's not an of course, it's not that simple. Because I have family elsewhere, because I feel far sometimes and I feel alone. Although I'm surrounded by beautiful friends, and although I love this city, and I've had the best moments of my life in 7 years, it's not a little time, it's a lot. But I want family, and my family is not here, and I dwell upon that in the choice of, do I stay somewhere that my heart is in, or do I go back to where my roots are? So I'm always balancing with like the dream of fantasy of the away and the fantasy of roots.
Frigage, le